It was the statement that surprised just about everyone. Harry and Meghan announcing they'd had enough.
There are obviously practical problems, but I see a big new horizon opening up for the royal family, internationally, transatlantically, in all sorts of senses.
It's absolutely imperative that Harry does not go off in a fit of anger, because a rogue Harry could be absolutely disastrous for the family.
The brothers were growing apart.
Inevitably, stuff happens, and we're certainly on different paths at the moment.
And that big Sussex-shaped problem at the heart of the royal family seemingly could not be resolved.
It's not enough to just survive something, right? Like, that's not the point of life. You've got to thrive.
So can Harry and Meghan find the private happiness they crave and the careers they want?
To be out there making money, perhaps off the back of the name royal family, that's a pretty big ask and something that hasn't been successfully done before.
The British taxpayer has got to feel this is a deal that works for them, otherwise that's toxic.
When Harry and Meghan stepped into the gardens of Kensington Palace to announce their engagement, it felt like a new beginning for the royal family. The American actress and the British prince, who had bonded over a love for Africa and a passion for helping others. Love story, it seemed, set to reshape and modernise the British monarchy. And what a 21st century union it was. A couple from different backgrounds, different countries, and of course, different heritage. Marrying in a British castle under blue skies. But for those of us who observed the Duke and Duchess up close, it was clear tensions were brewing from a very early stage. It was just about the wedding, we presumed, like in every family. But they were tensions which didn't go away. I watched Harry and Meghan emerge a newly married couple from our studio we had just above the entrance to St George's Chapel over there. That was less than 2 years ago. Now they say they want out of Britain for much of the year, out of their current roles in the royal family. How on earth did we get here? Even before that beautiful spring weekend in May 2018, the challenge facing this couple was always going to be a monumental one. How would the British establishment react to the arrival of an American celebrity? How would she react to becoming part of the centuries-old institution of monarchy?
In America, you just marry somebody that you love.
Julie Montague is in
country, but it's a completely different culture. Whether or not you marry into the aristocracy or the royal family, completely different culture. Then all of a sudden you marry into, the class system, and it's just different. There you encounter more snobbery. I don't know if it's the accent. I don't know if it's because we're too loud or
too pushy, too opinionated, too American.
What we didn't realise at the time, I suppose, was quite what a culture shock it would be for somebody to come in as a member of the royal family and have that kind of ambition and that kind of drive. I think probably was quite difficult, because we don't want our royals to be too ambitious or to be too outspoken or to be... We like them to be just right.
But as we watched to see if cultural differences would be the biggest challenge for Harry's new girlfriend, something more serious had started to emerge: press intrusion. Her family and friends were suddenly being harassed. Harry was immediately concerned.
I think he was scared that she might run away because of it and not want to go through with it, and that's why he was doing everything in his power to keep her there.
But then came some offensive words about Meghan's heritage. And that Harry made clear in an angry statement he would not accept.
Suddenly, we've got parts of the internet that were really calling her some horrendous names, and unfortunately this also seeps into certain areas of the press as well. Some of the commentary made comments about her mother's dreadlocks or her sort of family's cotton-picking roots.
Unfortunately, that has been quite negative in some aspects. Is trying to link part of her ethnicity to other things that are associated with black people in a negative way. So gangs, gangsters, the ghetto. And we've definitely not seen that type of language being used about anyone else in the royal family before.
I mean, this is a woman who has African-American roots. They just feel like she is being picked on unnecessarily and way more than Kate Middleton ever was.
In a recent interview, Meghan's co-star from her acting days in the US series Suits, Wendell Pierce, told how shocked he was by some of what was written about her in Britain's tabloids.
You're always amazed at the depth of it. You're always amazed at the great lengths people will go to it, to be destructive and nasty.
But senior members of the tabloid press just don't agree that Meghan was made to feel unwelcome in Britain.
There's a lot of accusations that not just the press, maybe, but we've been racist as a country. We haven't welcomed Meghan because she has a black mother and a white father. We haven't opened our arms to her mixed heritage.
It's laughable. People were delighted. Go and read the Sun editorials from those days. We thought that Meghan was a brilliant breath of fresh air and she was going to bring change to the monarchy. We celebrated. I'm sorry, Chris, if you were actually saying that you can no longer criticise someone who happens to be mixed race, then we've got real problems coming in this country. The criticism of Meghan is nothing to do with her race. It's to do with the fact that she has been incredibly hypocritical with political views that she has preached. As a member of the royal family, by the way, this is a big deal. You know, members of the royal family are not meant to openly share their politics.
But back at the time of the engagement in 2017, the couple had come to the conclusion they could manage it. Meghan would, Harry suggested at the time, actually be very good at being a royal.
I know the fact that she'll be really unbelievably good at the job part of it as well is obviously a huge relief to me, because she'll be able to deal with everything else that comes with it.
It would have been a very good idea for her to look at exactly what it all involved, and there's plenty of evidence of what life in the royal family does involve. They haven't given it very long, have they? A year and a half to come to this conclusion.
I've been covering this family as royal editor for 3 years, but my colleague Tom Bradby has known Prince Harry personally since he first travelled with him to Africa 20 years ago and has remained close to him since.
I mean, he never really sort of said why he asked me in to meet her, but
Harry asked Tom and others to meet Meghan, so how did anyone convince her that she would be able to cope with the attention?
I think he worried about, I think she was a bit like, whoa, this is more intense than I thought it would be, and he was a bit like, no, it'll be all right, you know. I mean, I think he's always wondered, why would anyone want this? Why would anyone want this life? And so I think he was very keen to reassure her, because he was in love with her, that it would be okay.
Do you think her eyes were wide open enough to the challenges of being part of this institution?
Well, I think when you're in love, you know, it's the ultimate example of travelling in hope, isn't it? You know, I think she thought, I love him, we can work it out. You know, between us, we can work it out.
And no one with any heart can blame Harry for wanting to protect Meghan from the worst excesses of the press, the kind of protection his mother never got.
They began the week as boys, they've ended it as men. We've seen them almost visibly mature in front of our eyes.
With Harry, he's fiercely protective of his mother's legacy. He's certainly damaged from the treatment that he perceives that she had at the time, and undoubtedly it was a very, very testing time.
He should have had a lovely childhood. He had actually about as miserable a childhood as possible, and, you know, losing his mother, and then we know that he suffered a lot from that.
It has to be triggering excessive and almost rapacious pursuit of Princess Diana, and certainly Prince Harry has every right to feel protective of his wife.
A desire to protect Meghan was understandable. Ask a long-standing photographer like Arthur Edwards, who followed Diana then and Meghan now, whether the comparisons are justified. And you get this response.
The parallels with Diana don't exist. I mean, Diana was hounded. Diana went to the gym every day, and there were photographers waiting for her outside the palace, waiting at the gym, climbing over the wall of the gym, pictures every day. Meghan got none of that. Nothing like that happened to her, not once.
We can argue about whether or not the hounding was the same or different, but as the royal wedding approached in 2018, the stories about the couple became more intense.
It is a daily onslaught of multiple tabloids and a lot of baseless rumors, falsehoods, and she's just been under attack.
Were the brothers getting on? Did Kate and Meghan see eye to eye? What Meghan wants, Meghan gets, claimed one headline. Did the tabloids have an agenda?
I think that strong, independent, articulate women are catnip for the British media. They love to bring them down. And if you're a woman of colour to boot, it means that it's open season. So the amount of really scathing attacks by people who don't even know this girl, I found extraordinary.
Hasn't the newspaper industry, and in particular the tabloids, of which you are an executive editor of the biggest selling one, aren't you to blame for it all going wrong?
I think that is patently ridiculous, and I think even if you asked Meghan and Harry, they would say that the press is only one factor in their anger about the UK. But I'm sorry, I will stand by everything that The Sun has done about Harry and Meghan. They are a public couple, they are partly funded by us, and they deserve proper scrutiny.
A few months after the fairy tale Windsor wedding, we packed our bags for Australia. The first big tour for the couple and an announcement that Meghan was pregnant. But Harry and Meghan didn't seem to enjoy the inevitable royal tour attention. It seemed to me they felt ill at ease. Perhaps it was Harry's worry for his wife and future child. Perhaps Meghan was wondering what on earth these jam-packed royal tours are all about. Their staff looked constantly under pressure, and not long after the return to London, 4 members of Harry and Meghan's household, for whatever reason, decided to leave.
Meghan comes from a very different background, a go-getting background of, being an actress in America. She's used to a different rhythm and a different was not, necessarily the way in which, courtiers and people at palaces are used to getting things done.
We saw the press begin to create this Duchess difficult narrative. We heard complaints about 5 a.m. emails and how she worked all hours of the day and how she had particular demands that didn't sit well with certain aides. And it was those stories that snowballed into another round of negative press. And so for Harry and Meghan, the shield was up again and they had to protect themselves.
Could they have done it any differently?
Now, to begin with, it was easy because everyone loved them and all the press was positive. But then when stuff did start to go negative, I think he and both of them, their instinct wasn't to just take it on the chin. Their instinct was that it was unreasonable and unfair and that you should try and fight it.
As the birth of their son Archie drew close, so the tensions grew between the couple's public role and their determination to protect their privacy. And they said they didn't want to do what royal mothers had done before them. A photo on the steps after birth was, they said, not for them. As for the christening, no cameras were invited in. No details were shared about Archie's godparents. All the while, they were finalising the split from William and Kate. A separate household, a separate charity foundation, a new home. The Cambridges and Sussexes were officially on different paths.
When the Fab Four launched, it was launched to huge fanfare. Everybody was excited about the possibilities of what these two couples could achieve.
Working as family does have its challenges, of course it does. Everybody here, the fact that everyone's laughing means that everybody knows exactly what it's like. Look, we're stuck together for the rest of our lives, so...
This is true. Togetherness at its finest. Yeah.
Unfortunately, it seemed that they couldn't work together, that they were moving in different directions, and that's what we're seeing now.
Then came a raft of other questions. Was it justified that the £2.4 million renovation of their new home, Frogmore Cottage, was paid from the public purse? Should they have taken 2 private jets for summer holidays in the Mediterranean after recent campaigns on climate change? The couple appeared increasingly isolated within the family. An autumn tour of Africa was a chance to reset the agenda and focus on the real stuff, helping others. And this tour felt much more like their own. It began in a township in Cape Town, the murder capital, in fact, of South Africa. There were powerful speeches and even interviews here and there on TV. It seemed to be going so well.
I am here with you as a mother, as a woman of color, and as your sister.
Yeah, the Africa tour was fantastic. We got to see baby Archie, our first prop on that tour, and, they were brilliant.
But scratch beneath the surface, as Tom Bradby did when he spoke to the couple for his ITV documentary, and it was clear that actually things were not going very well at all.
I don't know what the impact on your physical and mental health of all the pressure that you clearly feel under.
Yeah, well, I guess, and also thank you for asking, because not many people have asked if I'm okay.
but it's a very real thing to be going through behind the scenes.
And the answer is, would it be fair to say not really? Okay, as in it's really been a struggle?
Yes.
I mean, around the time of that documentary, some of the angst and the anger in the background, I was genuinely shocked that it had got that bad. I was like, wow, how did it get to this point? I mean, I knew things weren't ideal, but I really didn't know, you know, I got the impression they had decided before they got on the plane exactly how honest they were or weren't going to be. And again, my best guess is, and of course with all these things, you're half the time only guessing, they wanted that, I think, to be a bit of a pressure release valve. I think they wanted it as an indication of if they ever made the announcement, which we've now seen, that there would be some preparing the ground.
Like a warning shot to the rest of the royal family that something might be coming.
I don't think they thought about it as in a warning shot. That implies a degree of calculation that I don't think is there. I think it was like we're finding this situation really difficult. We've got to say something because it's, you know, the pressure is building up inside us.
It's not enough to just survive something, right? Like, that's not the point of life. You've got to thrive, you've got to feel happy, and I think I really tried to adopt this British sensibility of a stiff upper lip.
It has its, you know, it has its advantages, I guess.
I really tried, but I think that what that does internally is probably really damaging.
When she's got her, what you might call her, you know, game face on, like even the interviews earlier in the trip, you know, the demeanour was totally different. It was almost as if, you know, the curtain was pulled back and she was like, okay, I'm just gonna, for the next 5 minutes, I'm just gonna tell it like it is, and what happens as a result of that happens.
Did you think at that point that 2 months down the line, you know, at the turn of the year, Harry and Meghan will be announcing that they want, pretty much that they want out?
Yeah, I did think that.
That soon?
Yeah.
And on that very same day, the last of the tour, the couple announced a declaration of war on the press.
The statement just came, I think, as a huge shock for all of us because the tour had gone so well and because the coverage had been so positive across the spectrum, and I just don't think anyone saw it coming.
It was a real shame that it happened when it did. Obviously, we later found out that there were certain legal reasons behind it having to go out at that time. Found out about them. It's just a series of unfortunate events for the Sussexes.
What perhaps saddened people the most was the admission by Harry that yes, the reported rift with his brother William was actually true.
Inevitably, you know, stuff happens, but look, we're brothers. We'll always be brothers. We're certainly on different paths at the moment.
He admitted for the first time that there had been a rift with his brother. I'd been told at one point they weren't actually talking to each other. So confirmation firsthand from Harry that things hadn't all been, you know, peachy behind closed doors was pretty jaw-dropping. It was a real insight into a very fragile and pretty emotional man.
So the Sussexes had done their big TV interview. They had let the world see their pain. They thought that might be a trigger for change. But the change they wanted and needed didn't come. It was in late autumn that Harry and Meghan decided they couldn't go on. They had a new home here in Windsor, a new household of their own, new staff, new resources. It had all been tried, but ultimately it wasn't working, and it dawned on them that they were still deeply unhappy. So they started working then on their escape plan. The couple announced some time off, and this is where they chose to take it, on the far west coast of Canada, where they spent 6 weeks hiking with Archie, admiring the scenery and finessing their bid for independence. So when they flew back to London, they went straight to the Canadian High Commission to thank them for their hospitality. But they were about to surprise everyone, including Harry's immediate family.
Harry and Meghan announced they'll be stepping down as senior royals and seeking financial independence.
The palace scrambled to construct a response. When it came, it was short and terse. It is complicated and will take some time, they said. But how surprised were they?
I think there'd been some discussions for several weeks at least. I think Harry was reluctant to put it in writing, and somehow or other it was leaked.
You know the palace vehemently deny your version of events, that it was put down in writing and it was leaked.
I mean, I don't think there's any doubt it was in writing. I mean, there was stuff in writing, whether it was in an email or a document, I don't know. And there was a leak. I've never said, by the way, that the leak came from the palace.
There was a leak.
You know, it was put in writing and there was a leak. But what it is an indication of, which is more relevant, is the utter breakdown in trust in the normal functioning of the institution. Because I can tell you one thing for sure, Harry and Meghan absolutely believe that was leaked against them.
Dan Wootton from The Sun was the journalist who broke the story.
Harry is convinced that it was one of the other palaces, in other words, one of his parents' or brother's palaces, or grandmother's palace, who knows, that leaked it. You claim it's not a leak. Wednesday forced Harry and Meghan's hand, and it was on Wednesday evening that they made that shocking statement that they wanted effectively out of the royal family.
Oh, I absolutely acknowledge that. They would not have released that statement if we hadn't put that story on the front page. But I had first made Harry and Meghan, via their communications secretary, aware of the story that I was working on the 28th of December.
Right.
So you've got 10 days between December 28 and when we eventually run the splash on the front page of The Sun.
The conversations I had with senior aides in all three households, that everyone wanted to help them get to the stage that they want to be at in 2020. No one knew how.
But courtiers now knew they had to act. Statement made, Meghan went straight back to Canada, the place where she has friends, and the place where it is most likely this couple will make their new home.
They had a lovely holiday in Canada for 6 weeks. Their romance flourished in Canada, and of course, they went public with their relationship in Toronto at the Invictus Games.
The thing about Canada and America is that Meghan has a good friendship base there. She has all her friends and contacts from when she lived and worked in Toronto filming Suits.
So everybody's saying Harry and Meghan are moving to Canada, but we don't know that that's true yet. Let's, just set our expectations. They haven't said we're moving to Canada. They have said they'll divide their time between the UK and North America.
I'm quite sure that Harry and Meghan want to leave the UK and will leave the UK, but that does not mean they will leave the monarchy.
This is a bold move that could very well, if handled properly, answer that question to, is the monarchy relevant in the 21st century? Meghan and Harry could very well answer that with a bold yes.
This is giving the monarchy a very exciting new dimension. There are obviously practical problems, but I see a big new horizon opening up for the royal family, internationally, transatlantically, in all sorts of senses.
So how might this royal crisis look to the rest of the world?
This looks terrible from the outside. This is a couple who are so in love, they have a little baby, and they are basically fleeing the country. They are leaving behind the whole family, everything. And it just looks terrible. It looks like they've been run out of the country.
They have shown that they want to do things differently, which has upset a lot of traditionalists. But unless the royal family was willing to give in some way and embrace that, it would be quite tricky for them to be able to carve out a space for themselves.
The thought that the Queen might have been involved in ousting them, I don't believe that is actually what happened.
So as royal aides try to work out what to do about it all, might their best guide to the future go? Another American divorcee, Wallis Simpson, fell in love with Prince Edward, the future king.
The British public absolutely adored him. He was very, very popular. He gets involved with Mrs. Simpson, who is surely the most hated woman in the world at one point. And on the other hand, of course, her staff and people who knew her, her friends, really rather liked her. But he must have realised that they could not possibly accept a woman with two husbands living as their queen.
Forced into a decision soon after becoming king, Edward VIII chose Mrs. Simpson over the monarchy.
I have found it impossible to carry the heavy burden of responsibility without the help and support of the woman I love.
Edward's abdication transformed the course of British history as George VI, the present Queen's father, succeeded him.
If Edward VIII had not abdicated, you might not have Queen Elizabeth on the throne.
Had Edward VIII married somebody of childbearing age and produced a line of his own, the Queen, Princess Elizabeth, would have had roughly the same status as Princess Alexandra, and therefore her grandson would be the same as Princess Alexandra's grandsons, who I could certainly name for you, but you probably couldn't. Had he not married at all, then of course the present Queen would have become Queen not in 1952, but 20 years later in 1972.
So Harry and Diana and the rest of it would be, part of somebody else's imagination.
After the abdication crisis of 1936, the former king became the Duke of Windsor, but he and his American wife were never made to feel welcome in the royal family.
He effectively went into exile for the rest of his life. The only time that he had a public job after that was to be governor of the Bahamas. So he wasn't on the breadline, although he, like a lot of rich people, he thought he was. Towards the end of his life, he was relying very heavily on the kindness of sort of extremely rich American millionaires.
But many years later, Princess Diana showed that it was possible to leave the royal family and still use her profile to great effect.
The Princess of Wales, as we know, did undertake a certain number of engagements.
Diana, she was struggling to find a role, and she eventually found one through the Red Cross, working with them with regards to landmines.
A lot of the work she did was extremely good, but that was totally different from what she would have been doing as the wife of the Prince of Wales.
I'm only trying to highlight a problem that's going on all around the world. That's all.
But Diana's estrangement came at a huge reputational cost to the royal household.
Diana was hurt and she was angry. And she went out and made mischief. She gave that panorama interview that just was explosive, that talked about the three of them in the marriage, that talked about how the royal family had treated her, how terribly unhappy she'd been. And I think there is absolute potential, if he leaves in a state of anger and hurt, for him to create mischief as well.
So what of the present day and the other royals who do largely support themselves?
I think if we look at Princess Beatrice and Eugenie, they both have full-time jobs, they're both involved in philanthropic work, but they are privately funded. You know, their security is not paid by the taxpayer.
Both of them have jobs. They are not funded in the same way, although they do undertake a certain number of royal duties. It was always going to be the case that Harry and Meghan were going to be in the central team, which is probably why they used the expression as senior members of the royal family. If they go out of that, I don't see them sort of suddenly becoming like the York princesses. I think they'll be in a different league altogether.
Harry and Meghan are not Beatrice and Eugenie. The Sussexes will remain global stars even if they half leave the royal family.
Meghan Markle pole vaulted from the B list to the A+ out of the stratosphere list when she married Prince Harry.
Meghan was fairly well regarded in Hollywood before she met Harry, but she wasn't super famous. She was on a show called Suits, and she'd been on it for about 7 years, but wasn't that popular. She is now one of the most recognized women in the whole world.
Which is why the couple launched their own independent website last week, on which they set out their view of what the future looks like.
They've written their manifesto. Yes, they've produced this website. They've said that they want to be financially independent, but equally they want to carry on supporting the Queen, and they will carry on with their patronages. I just don't quite see how any of that is going to work in practice.
So Meghan and Harry have said they're going to become financially independent, which is very easy when you have, his money.
On that website, the couple stated they no longer want money from the publicly funded sovereign grant, but they do plan to keep taking funds from their father's private estate, the Duchy of Cornwall.
Out of the money that Prince Charles gets, he apparently gives £5 million a year to Harry and William equally, so they get £2.5 million each.
How much the Sussexes keep getting from Prince Charles and how much they earn themselves will depend very much on what kind of royal role it's agreed they will do.
For Harry and Meghan to be financially independent, there's a lot that needs to be figured out. How will their earnings be separated? As working royals, they're doing this as the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, so to be out there making money, perhaps off the back of the name of the royal family, that's a pretty big ask and something that hasn't been successfully done before.
As one of the most famous couples in the world, there is a lot they could do with brand Sussex.
They can earn a great deal more money outside the system than within the system.
The area of finance could be where this whole thing breaks down, because if it's seen that the Sussexes trade on the royal name, then that's not royal.
Now that Meghan is stepping back from her senior role in the family, she could have any part that she wants. She could compete against a Julia Roberts or anyone of that magnitude, because let's face it, she's going to get people in movie theaters, period. And that is what matters in this town. That is what matters in Hollywood.
And this isn't the first time a well-known actress has married into a royal family.
Americans fell in love with this princess story because it had happened before with Grace Kelly.
Grace Kelly, who was a big Hollywood star, became Princess Grace of Monaco, marrying Prince Rainier. She was living within a gilded cage. I think she found life very difficult and did want to go back and make more films. But the people of Monaco wanted their princess to be a full-time princess. I can see parallels.
If being independent means that Meghan's going to go back and being a film star, I myself don't think that is on.
If Meghan doesn't return to acting, the Sussexes aren't short of other options.
6 months ago, the Duke and Duchess, Meghan and Prince Harry, filed for trademarks of the Sussex name so that they could monetize and capitalize off of things such as books, tennis shoes to clothing. The trademark is very broad.
If these T-shirts are sold for money that goes in their own pockets, that is no good. But if the T-shirts are sold for the benefit of a great charitable foundation, then that is fine.
That is not why they're leaving the royal family, is so that they can become millionaires. Newsflash, they already were millionaires.
There have been talks that she would be a brand ambassador for perhaps Apple, that she and Prince Harry could model the lines along what President Obama and Michelle Obama have done, forming production deals with Netflix. The possibilities are endless.
What they seem to want is a hybrid, which allows them to do pretty much what they like commercially, while also effectively being representatives of the royal family. And it's hard to imagine that the palace will allow them to maintain a significant role, global role, as part of the proper family, using their royal titles and simultaneously make significant amounts of money commercially.
So it seems their biggest PR challenge, certainly in the UK, is cakeism, the having your cake and eating it model. The couple have said they want to keep living at Frogmore Cottage, their UK home, which was renovated at a cost of £2.5 million from public funds.
The benefit to Harry would be about £5,000 a month. So the reality is that the benefit he is getting from being there is free rental of about £60,000 a year.
Frogmore is owned by the Queen. Ultimately, it will be her choice whether her grandson and his family can remain in residence. Especially if they will be in Canada for 6 months of the year. Meghan feels much more at home here, and there are many reasons why.
People are not seen as necessarily where they've come from first. They're seen as just who they are. And I think such a beautiful example to the world of multiculturalism, diversity, inclusion, and that's another plus, I think, for them. I think there is that Canadian awareness, and Canadians are polite. I mean, it's not a cliche, it's actually true.
It's a proud part of the Commonwealth, and, you know, the Queen is very much their Queen too.
One of the first signals was on Meghan's veil were all the flowers representing the 53 countries of the Commonwealth.
They relish in their roles across the Commonwealth. Obviously, Meghan is Vice President of the Queen's Commonwealth Trust, Harry is Commonwealth Youth Ambassador. They don't want that to end, and there are so many parts of their royal lives that they want to continue.
Again, he represents a different generation of the monarchy. He's the one that we can touch and we can see and we can feel and we can empathize with. I think the country very, very much has already embraced their presence here in and out over the years. I don't think it's going to be a question of will we welcome them? We already have.
There is a great love for Her Majesty the Queen, but at the same time, we are objective enough to step back and see the very real issues that Harry and Meghan have been contending with as human beings, and to be able to relate to those in a way that perhaps some of the members of the press in the UK can't.
We don't have these type of tabloids that they even have in the UK. They don't even exist here. So I don't think that there is as much of an appetite for that. They spent Christmas here for what, 3 weeks, 4 weeks? And there was only one picture that came out of Harry and Archie. So it's not the same tabloid journalism in Canada as it is in the UK.
As it currently stands in Canada now, there is almost zero paparazzi. Will that continue to be the case if we have the world's largest global superstars living on our doorstep? I'm not sure.
I think that the conversation now is who's going to pay for their security. So I think that is a question that some Canadians have, saying that, okay, well, what does this mean for us? I mean, the British taxpayer paid for part of their living expenses and their salary and that kind of thing. But now is it going to be up to us?
What won't be changing for the Sussexes is their charities. Harry has already made it clear that he won't be turning his back on them. Sentebale, for example, the HIV charity he founded in southern Africa, has already had that reassuring message.
Harry's commitment to Sentebale has never been in question. I knew, before the announcement
it's lifelong.
And fewer royal duties could mean Harry will be able to spend more time on the causes closest to his heart.
Everything that we've built in country, in Lesotho and now in Botswana and Malawi, he's been involved from the ground up. You know, if there are 2 panels in the roof that are leaking, Harry could show you exactly which ones they are and why they should have been put in differently, you know, all those years ago, and there's nobody more kind of on the case than him.
But questions are now being asked over whether Harry will show that same level of commitment to the House of Windsor.
One of the questions to which I don't know the answer is, are they at the point where they just are writing off Britain and, you know, it's fair? And I've got to tell you that my hunch is, the answer to that is no, I don't think they are. Particularly, not, you know, I don't know about her, but for him, you know, I can't stress enough, he loves this country, he believes in the monarchy, and I think even now it's possible to construct something where, yeah, maybe a half-in, half-out model does work. But it's going to require a lot of careful thought and imagination with an incredibly careful eye on the British taxpayer. The British taxpayer has got to feel this is a deal that works for them. Otherwise, that's toxic.
It may not turn out badly for Meghan Markle because it depends what she really wants at the end of the day. We don't really know what she wants. I feel much more worried for Prince Harry than I do for her.
I don't want him to go. I think he's just been a great asset to this country, and he can be still. I mean, he's got a great future supporting his brother William.
These are big question marks about the future popularity of the royal family. Meghan and Harry are the youngest, to use an old-fashioned word, trendiest, hottest, whatever, couple. Not just in Britain, obviously, but in the whole world and particularly across the Atlantic. To undermine, to sabotage, to destroy what they're trying to achieve would be a great mistake for the royal family.
It's absolutely imperative that Harry does not go off in a fit of anger and pique and turn his back on the whole institution, because Harry, a rogue Harry, could be disastrous, absolutely disastrous for the family, for the monarchy.
Harry and Meghan always said they would do things their way. They would do it differently. At first, we celebrated that. But perhaps we underestimated how very different it would be. In the end, no one could make it work. Not the couple themselves, not the royal family, and not the United Kingdom. Some will be excited, some sad, and others relieved that everyone has a chance to move on. The royal family will of course continue, but will now do so without Harry and Meghan at its heart.